I am Mike Tolliver, the Executive Director for the Center of Hebraic Thought, and I'm here with Dr. Dru Johnson, our President and Founder of the Center, as well as the Templeton Research Fellow at Wycliffe Hall at University of Oxford. Dru, thank you so much for taking the time to talk through something that you would actually like to workshop with our Hebraic thought community. And so This is, something that we're doing for the first time, but it's actively giving our community an opportunity to interact with the scholars who are writing new scholarship. And so, Dru, I'm super curious to hear from you. What is a project or two that you're currently working on that you'd want to talk about?
Yeah, so I have a couple projects. I got to write a book here. I have a book on law that's coming out, how to read biblical law. I have a book on how to read biblical sacrifice that I'll probably be writing this year. I'm very interested in disruptive reading and disruptive listening of Scripture as a practice for people who are interested in the text, religious people not. But the thing I really want to put out there is I want to write eventually, in the next few years, kind of a Hebraic philosophy of science. And obviously I understand the Israelites were not scientists in any way that we would think of science. But I've argued in several books in light form that essentially they are creating the conceptual world in which science makes sense. And so I want to, like a lot of my big projects, I like to think about them for a few years and get lots of feedback before I kind of dive in and start writing. Because once you start writing, you kind of get locked into a certain mode of thinking about it. And I want to stay as flexible as possible until then.
That's super fascinating. And sorry, my mind is kind of running away as I think about that project. But certainly, the scientific method doesn't work if we don't live in a orderly, created world, right? Otherwise, you do an experiment and it works. One time you do an experiment and it fails. Oh, well, that's just the trickster god Loki causing it to fail.
Yeah. And there's all kind. That's a low-hanging fruit argument, I think. So lots of people have tread that ground, which is great. It's one that people miss often. Is like, oh yeah, there's certain order. But with quantum mechanics and kind of problems of indiscernibility with probability, that argument gets a little bit more complicated. But I actually think the Hebrew authors have a way, not around it, but a way through those problems as well. Because some might just say, well, yeah, it's some order of granularity, everything's ordered and regular, but you just keep going down, until you get to the smallest parts, and it's not regular at all. In fact, it's completely incoherent. But I actually think that there's still some graspable logic that the Hebrew biblical authors they're already anticipating this.
Fascinating. Well, if anyone in our community is aware of anything that might touch on that as Dru develops that project, please feel free to send it to us. Put it on our social media, put it on our YouTube channel, on our podcast, comments. You can send that feedback to us and help Dru as he works through and thinks on this upcoming project.
Yeah. And I'd like to put it, the areas that I'm interested in are obviously logic and math, because those undergird a lot of it, but scientific process, the justification, Bayesian analysis, the kinds of things you need to say, this is why I have confidence in what we think is going on here. And even more importantly, this is why we, as a community of specialists in this area, have higher degrees of confidence in these kinds of explanations over those kinds of explanations. And I've done a lot of work in this in other books, but I've never put it together in a kind of a philosophy of science. And I hope to do a nerdy version of it that convinces colleagues, or at least gives them something to chew on, and then a popular version for lay people to see why it's not just that the world is ordered, as you said, but it goes way past that into all the nitty-gritty details of what the Hebrew biblical authors are doing, and why that might be uniquely conceptually undergirding for everything that we think is scientifically accurate today.
Picturing that book map, what is it that you call it?
Yeah, the nerd spectrum, the books on the nerd spectrum, right?
That's right.
So I hope to put 2 more books on there.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you talking through that with us.
All right, looking forward to the feedback.